All right, back to it here on the Steve Gruber Show. Gosh, it's been a good week. Busy as always, but so much to talk about these days, so much to keep up with. Jarrett Stepman is a columnist for the Daily Signal, author of The War on History, The Conspiracy to Rewrite America's Past. He joins me now. Jarrett, nice to see you today.
Good to see you, too.
Always good to have you. Look, New York City, speaking of the past, the Roosevelt Hotel there. By the way, I was there. The last time I was there was when Donald Trump was at Madison Square Garden, so it would have been October 27th, I guess. Look, the place was loaded, and where we were staying was right around the corner, and you had to walk by it every day, and it was pretty obvious what everything was there, pretty clear. And now they say they're going to close the place to illegals. But these places have cashed in. And by the way, that hotel is owned by the nation of Pakistan. So I want people to think about the fact that that hotel is owned by the nation of Pakistan. We've given untold millions of dollars because nobody really knows until you audit it. And if you audit it, then of course you're a racist or some damn thing. I get confused by it all. But how much money have we given them? Is it really going to close? And what happens next?
Yeah, I think it really is going to close. Something that always bothered me about this is the fact that it had the name Theodore Roosevelt Hotel, which I'm not for name changes normally, but to me, it always felt like a bit of an insult to Theodore Roosevelt's memory that they were bringing in hundreds of thousands of legal immigrants and also paying a hostile foreign government to do it. It seemed like a violation of everything Roosevelt stood for. New York City had a $220 million contract with the hotel that has now been actually canceled. So that's obviously good news. But a lot of federal money was going that way too. FEMA had sent over $80 million toward the hotel that they've clawed back, fortunately, because of the Trump administration. FEMA also tried to spend an additional $59 million that, again, is being clawed back to be pulled away from the hotel. So this thing didn't exist because it was simply a charity or anything like that. It existed because it was getting hundreds of millions of dollars. It was getting a lot of money to stay in operation. Now that those funds are being cut off, it's clearly going to go away. In fact, Mayor Eric Adams announced that within the next 2 months, it's going to shut down operations.
Well, you know, it's interesting. You mentioned these charities. Look, these charities, Jared, this was a business plan. Leaving the border wide open, which they cheerleaded for, whether it was Catholic Social Services, Lutheran Social Services, the Jewish organizations that had welcome centers on the border that have now closed because there's been no new illegals in places like San Diego, or Bethany Christian Services. All of these charities, this was their financial plan. Soak the taxpayers, charge, $300-400 a day per person for a place to stay in a couple of meals. Because they weren't paying for the cable, the government was paying for that. They weren't paying for the cell phones, the government was paying for that. And the food was probably paid for as well, to be honest with you. I mean, they were making piles of money. They want as many illegals as possible, and they didn't give a damn about America, did they?
No, not at all. And that's really the nexus of illegal immigration in this country. It's a government problem. It's obviously an illegal criminal cartel problem, and it's an NGO problem. And I think it's a good thing, especially that the Trump administration announced that it's going to start auditing every single NGO, any single organization that's
Jarrett,
receiving
let me ask you
government
this.
money.
I'm glad you brought that up, but let me ask you this. They call them non-governmental organizations, NGOs. But if you run an NGO and you cannot survive but for federal money, are you really an NGO, or are you just another part of the government?
Yeah, nearly government organization is probably a better word for these organizations, and they're very fearful right now. I mean, I think that's what the Trump
Good.
administration's done better than any Republican administration, certainly in my lifetime, is seeing where the actual power is and cutting off that power through the money, the funds that they're getting through the government. They funded a vast, I think, left wing network that's really a global one. I mean, it's not just USAID, it's countless other organizations that are receiving government money to promote radically left wing goals, open borders. I mean, this is how the whole scam worked. And it worked for a very long time, no matter what administration it was, no matter what party was in power. That's finally being cut off thanks to the Trump administration. I think that's why there's been an actual transfer of power this time between Biden and Trump that I think is having dramatic repercussions. Certainly, we're seeing it with the border, which is very quickly getting under control. We're seeing dramatic drop offs in the number of people who are crossing into this country illegally. And we're seeing here, certainly in New York now, we're seeing these so-called shelters being shut down in mass. It wasn't just Roosevelt Hotel. There's 50 others in the city that are also being shut down. So we're seeing a vast network being shut down all at once. thanks to the Trump administration.
Yeah, and it's a step forward. But meanwhile, though, you've got this facility that I read about here yesterday, maybe the day before. Anyhow, 2,200 men to be housed in a brand new 250,000 square foot facility in the Bronx, and people are mad as hell about it. I mean, you saw this, right, Jarrett? 2,200 military-age men being dropped into this place. First of all, 250,000 square feet for 2,200 people. Isn't that a hell of a lot?
It's an enormous amount of people, and you're seeing a rebellion
Enormous
from the
amount
actual
of space,
local
though.
residents.
I mean, it's a huge facility. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing a rebellion from the local residents, as you have in New York. It's funny. I think this is really coming down from the powers that be, especially Governor Hochul of New York, who wants to make New York, of course, a sanctuary state and New York a sanctuary city. I think Adams has been more cooperative with the Trump administration. But there's a lot of local rebellions taking place. This is really a top-down measure to ensure that the illegal immigration train continues. And I think that you're seeing already town halls, livid residents in the Bronx. They have a right to be. Look, I live in New York City. I saw the problems that this caused. People see how this causes problems locally with crime, with chaos. People don't want this in their communities. We've seen schools shut down to house illegal immigrants. I think it makes a lot of people angry, even people who are not necessarily political or people who were not on one side or another. Now they know they're on one side. They see the side that's bringing in mass amounts of illegal immigration. And there's been a larger shift on a national level. I think that the Trump administration has done an incredible job at shutting that down. And I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of pressure on the state of New York to shut down this facility, too.
Yeah, I think there will be. I mean, look, I saw this last year sometime, maybe in September. There was all these black moms in Chicago. And they're in these predominantly historically black neighborhoods saying, what are you doing to us? You're taking away our community center where the kids used to go after school for programs, to play sports, to have tutoring and different things. That's gone because it went to the illegals. You see things like this in New York. And it's the moms, oftentimes in these predominantly minority communities, they're saying, why are we getting screwed? You know, we voted for the Democrats, and yet we're getting the short end of this deal, Jarrett. And they're mad as hell. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, they're right to be mad as hell, and they're right to be angry about the fact that there's now an increase in criminality. It's brought in violent criminal cartels that have led to dramatic increases in crime, certainly around Roosevelt Hotel, but in other places around the city. Local residents have a reason not to want to bring that into the city. That's not cultural enrichment.
No.
That's actually damaging the city. So I think that that's disgraceful. It's a disgraceful legacy of the previous regime, and hopefully it's going to come to an end, not just in New York, but in cities around the country.
Absolutely true. The rewrite of history. We can't have it, and we've got to tell the truth about what's going on right now. Jarrett Stepman. You can find him at the Daily Signal. Find his work there. Jarrett, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Steve.
Really appreciate it. Look, they should be mad as hell. I want you to put yourself in their position if you're not. And they drop a whole crowd of people that don't care about the culture, don't speak your language, and they just drop there and take all the resources away from you and your kids and your neighborhood and your neighbors. It's a terrible thing. Terrible damn thing. I'll be right back.